Marin City Public Housing. This is similar to what we just heard, but the commission has had a request from the property owner, Marin Housing Authority, to defer hearing this item until next commission meeting. We will first hear the staff report on the nomination. The commission then will take public comment from the Marin Housing Authority, then the applicant. Then each side will be able to have a rebuttal period. Public comment then will be closed. The commission then will deliberate the request for deferment and/or hearing. So, there we go.
There we go.
So we'll hear staff reports. Boy, good guys.
This is a lively one.
This is good.
It is. It's very exciting.
So,
Oh, thank you.
okay, thank you. We'll settle down a little bit and we'll get on with the staff report.
Marin City Public Housing, known as Golden Gate Village since the 1990s, is located on a 29.8-acre site in southern Marin County, directly northwest of the city of Sausalito. The topography ranges from tree-covered hillsides at the southwest that gently slope down northerly to level ground. The property encompasses 29 contributing buildings, 28 apartment housing units ranging in size from 1 to 5 stories, and a single one-story office and maintenance facility for the Marin County Housing Authority, and one contributing site, the designed landscape. All the buildings were planned and arranged to provide privacy and views within an open landscaped green campus. The building style was strongly influenced by Frank Lloyd Wright, reflective of design architect Aaron Green's architectural philosophy and practice, an individual who was trained by Wright, as well as then serving as Wright's West Coast representative. The campus was constructed by the County of Marin, using federal funding, as the first phase of the redevelopment of Marin City from a temporary wartime labor town of quickly constructed wood frame buildings to a permanent solution providing housing for low to mid-income residents who settled in the area. All buildings are structurally sound and materially intact with few alterations, and retain all aspects of historic integrity. Marin City Public Housing is eligible at the local level of significance under Criterion A in the areas of social history and community planning and development, as a product of post-World War II urban development in Northern California. It is also eligible under Criterion C in the areas of architecture and landscape architecture for its association with 3 prominent mid-century designers, architects John Carl Warnke and Aaron G. Green, and landscape architect Lawrence Halprin. The period of significance is 1955 to 1960, representing a span of events beginning with County Supervisor Vera Schultz's lead role in acquiring the land for redevelopment as a permanent community, particularly for low-income workers who lost their jobs at the close of the Marin shipyard. Through master planning for the new community by County Planning Director Mary Summers and her department, the selection of architects John Carl Warnke and Aaron G. Green as associated architects for the design of the 300-unit low-rent housing project, the design and approval process for the project, and construction. The property is nominated by Royce McLemore as Executive Director of Women Helping All People in support of the Golden Gate Village Resident Council, and the nomination was prepared by a third party. 13 letters of support have been received to date, at the time that the staff report was written on Wednesday afternoon. A letter of response is on file from the public agency property owner, Marin Housing Authority, MHA, commenting on the March 2017 draft nomination. The May 2017 draft nomination, as posted and sent to the State Historical Resources Commission, addressed many of the concerns identified in MHA's letter. Correspondence was received from Council on behalf of MHA and the State Historic Preservation Officer responded. An additional letter was received from counsel on behalf of MHA, and SHPO proposed a conference call. During the call, the property owner accepted the SHPO's offer of a copy of the staff report. Copies of all written communications were distributed to the Commission. At 3:30 p.m. yesterday afternoon, Thursday, July 27th, the property owner submitted a letter of objection via email to the SHPO. 2 additional letters of support and 1 additional letter of comment were received this morning and distributed to the Commission as copies allowed. Staff supports the nomination as written and recommends the State Historical Resources Commission determine Marin City Public Housing is eligible under National Register Criteria A and C at the local level of significance with a 1955 to 1960 period of significance. Staff recommends the State Historic Preservation Officer approve the nomination for forwarding to the National Park Service for listing on the National Register.
Thank you.
Lots of speakers.
Okay, we'll open it up for public comment,
Should I make a statement about all the cards?
please.
Okay. For those in support, we've received many, many cards, and we thank you for them. We've had somebody order them for us, so we'll get through them as best we can. If you have not been called up, you have the opportunity to speak at the end of the meeting in the public comment period, but note that all of the slips that were submitted will be recorded in the record of the meeting as being in support of the nomination.
Wow. I think this is a record breaker. So we'll start off with Royce McLemore.
My name is Royce McLemore, and I'd like to, like before me, have those that support our project just to let the commission know by standing. I am a 71-year-old resident of Marin City, so I've gone through and seen the whole gamut. I remember when Golden Gate Village was built, I was a senior in high school, and some of my friends were able to move into the beautiful structures at that time. My family wasn't as fortunate. We had to remain in the flat land in the swamp area for another 3 years before my parents were able to move into Marin City Public Housing. It was during that time, you never miss it until you don't have it. But then when you come back to it, you appreciate it for all that it's really worth. And that's part of my story. As I, a period of time left, did my Berkeley experience and came back and really saw the beauty of Marin City and in its entirety, as well as Golden Gate Village. The history of Golden Gate Village, as it's told to me by my elders, and I just want to say I'm standing on the shoulders of many of the public housing advocates who advocated for public housing, who advocated to remain in Marin City after the Marin Shipyard. It's 75 years that Marin City's been in existence. It's 75 years of Marin Ship in Sausalito. The residents of Sausalito say that there would be no Marin Ship if it were not for the workforce of Marin City, particularly the African American people who came from all parts of the South to come and make Marin City their home. For that, I am very grateful. Our elders said at that point in time, after it was over and the urban removal began, that there was no place for them to go and that they stood firm. We had Vera Schultz, who was the first woman supervisor in Marin County, who came from a place of acceptance of black people, who came to Marin City and talked with the leaders at that point in time, who was moved by the swamp-like areas that we were made to have to live in with no place to go. She went to Washington, D.C., and got that property, what's known as Golden Gate Village, from the Federal Housing Administration. She came back, hired the best, commissioned the best of Aaron Green, who is the West Coast partner of Frank Lloyd Wright, as well as the other architects that participated in this marvel endeavor. This was not built for temporary housing. The temporary housing of Marin City had been torn down. This was built for the permanency of African American people who were left behind. Many had been able to move out to Vallejo, the Richmond, the Oakland, etc., but there was still our population that had nowhere to go. This is why the structures are the way that they are. Aaron Green and company were ahead of their time. I know in one of his books, in his book, he said that you can even deem this property as a Frank Lloyd Wright property because of the heavy influence. Not only there, but also our Aaron Green was the architect working with Vera Schultz and Frank Lloyd Wright at the Marin Civic Center. Aaron Green was the one that actually oversaw the development of the Civic Center. And if you really look at the roofing of the Civic Center, it's blue tile. And if you look at the roofs of the Golden Gate Village high-rises, it's keratotic. So it's whose influence is who? I'll leave that to you. I just want to say that as it relates to our story, and this has been a project that I thought about for the past, 5 years, of how to really give recognition and honor and legacy to the African American population who has more or less gone. I'm one of the elders now where I used to be the youngest. So I have a commitment that I had to make to see what I could do so that the next generations would know their legacy. If it's torn down, there will be no legacy. And so with it being as sound as it is, and just when it was built in Marin City, I remember that we were told that if there any national disaster, we were to go to the high-rises for safety because of the architectural design of how they're built into the land. Just beautiful. So in doing a little bit more research too, I found out through the National Historic Landmark Program that in 2008 that there was an assessment, special assessment that was done. And then I found out in reading it that there's 0 National Historic Landmarks are associated with African American history in the following categories: art, conservation, and maritime history. So I looked a little bit further, what is maritime history? And maritime history, according to their definition, is the history of exploration, fishing, navigation, and use of inland, coastal, and deep sea waters. Well, what better way, because our people were building those ships at record-breaking time for the deep sea waters. This would give, as well as the businesses that followed. But if your board takes the recommendation of staff, then Golden Gate Village will have an opportunity to be one of the first African American under the maritime history to be placed on the National Registry. And so I thank you for hearing me, and I probably talk too much as usual, but I have a lot of passion. I've lived in my unit, my home, my condo. I've lived there for 41 years. I've been blessed to be second generation, raised my children there, and we have 4 generations in Marin City. So this is an opportunity. It has changed, but it's true integration in the sense of integration as it relates as a community, because there's really no place for poor people 200 to 300% below poverty level to be able to live in Marin County. Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia Hoover.
Hello. Hi, my name is Malachiah Hoover. I am the granddaughter of Miss Royce McLemore, and I'm a 4th generational member of the Marin City Golden Gate Village community. From a historical perspective, Marin City should be preserved as a historical landmark because of its significance in World War II. As many of you should know, many blacks migrated from the South and moved to Marin City to build ships and tanks for World War II. After the war, whites and Chinese were able to move out, but for social and racial issues, blacks were unable to move out, and Golden Gate Village thus was created. My family was one of those families that migrated to the South to help in the war relief. This is a time when blacks didn't even have the right to vote, yet my family helped this country to fight in a war for freedom, yet this very liberty was denied to us in our very own homeland. From a personal perspective, Marin City is where I was born and raised. It is a small community, very safe and close-knit, and it was this security, structure that enabled me to pursue many of my academic endeavors. I stand today, I'm currently pursuing a PhD at Stanford University, and this is due to the upbringing that I had at Golden Gate Village community. Marin City is my home, where I want to live once I establish a career, and a place where I want to raise my children and continue my family legacy. Do not take away my home, and do not try to erase our history. Marin City should be preserved, and its history forever remembered. Thank you.
Thank you. Garza Stover? Gracie Stover.
My name is Gracie Stover. My husband and I come to California, Marin City, California, in 1955. When I come to California, my husband was working for the Southern Pacific Railroad Company. But in the meantime, my sister, Helena Beatrice Brown, was living there because she was at service in a government. She was in service. And her family had come here. Then later on, my husband and I and 2 children come here. Now, I have been fortunate enough to stay here in Marin City. The reason why I'm fortunate enough to stay here in Marin City, I have never got rich. But what I'm saying is, when I moved here in the high-rising building, I was the first person with my 3 children at that time, was moved to 89 Cole Drive. And with the luck of the supervisor and the housing authority and the good Lord, I'm still at 89 Cole Drive. But what I'm saying to you, I want to ask you all, please. Now, I'm getting old. I'm 82 years old now. So I'm getting old, but please make it room for my children, and I still have children, grandchildren, now great-grandchildren, and look like nobody wants to move out of Marin City. But I want to thank you all very much. If I ask you all, please, for y'all's sake and everybody else's sake and the good Lord, please let these children stay here in Marin City and their family. Well, I hope and pray that maybe I will be around to see you all make this a historical place. And may God bless you all. Thank you.
Jonathan Livingston.
I'll be brief because I'm Jonathan Livingston, Livingston Energy Innovations. I'll be brief because there are so many speakers behind me and the time is limited. As a lifetime resident and business owner in southern Marin County, I heartily endorse the nomination of Golden Gate Village as a historic place. I support the nomination on behalf of the spirit of Golden Gate Village, as it was conceived by its advocates, designers, and residents 60 years ago, and as it will hopefully continue to exist 100 years from now. In addition to its substantial historic, aesthetic, and social significance, Golden Gate Village also represents a rare example of redevelopment done right, despite the burden of maintenance and inappropriate modifications that it and many historic sites now face. The Bay Area is home, sadly, to numerous examples of redevelopment done wrong and vibrant communities crushed, typically due to demographic or financial pressures, often with the best of intentions. During my lifetime, I've observed a legacy of missteps by generations of Marin County government officials who in the late 1950s opposed construction of the Frank Lloyd Wright designed Marin Civic Center, and a decade later approved development of the ill-conceived Marin Cello development, which would have created a new city in the heart of what's now the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. If Golden Gate Village is not protected and preserved, I see great danger of it being replaced by a kind of 21st century mini Marin Cello, blighting the highly visible site adjacent to the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. Having grown up and worked in my early years with my father, prominent city planner Lawrence Livingston Jr., and his colleagues and collaborators, including Lawrence Halperin, John Carl Warnicki, and Aaron Green, I recognize the importance of preserving California's unique mid-century architectural heritage. Golden Gate Village is one of the most extensive and fully realized examples of this, rivaled only by Palm Springs and Pacific Palisades. It is located in the heart of Marin County, where a hodgepodge of 20th century development has created few sites of architectural or historic interest. At this time when racial, economic, and other forms of diversity are being challenged in our country, and irreplaceable historic sites have been dynamited on the other side of the globe, I look to the State Historic Resources Commission to support registration of this important site, and to the communities of Marin County to provide the resources for its revitalization in conjunction with the just treatment of its residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Ora Ann Hathaway.
May I,
You want to defer?
there's so many other people that are more important to speak than I. Hi. My name is Ora Ann Hathaway. Thank you very much for hearing me. I know there are many more people that will be speaking. I am here to support the nomination, and I have had the blessing and the honor to really study these buildings, to study the history, to assist a little bit with the HRE and Garavaglia, and to be welcomed into homes and just to see the integrity of the buildings being kept up by the people themselves who live there. As the former person spoke and other people have spoke, this is the time to do this. Right now is the time to take this action to preserve these buildings and this community. Preserving people in place is very important, not moving them away and then doing something to the buildings and moving them back. That is not an option for this community in Marin County, and we would lose the soul, I think, of our county if we destroyed this community. And I believe in preserving people in place. We will preserve a very important part of our county and a sister project to the Marin Civic Center. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you vote in favor.
Thank you. Quickly, we have Mariah Ashby.
My name is Mariah Ashby. I am the 4th generation of Golden Gate Village. My grandmother is Royce McLemore, and also my grandmother is Karen Ashby. I am a TAM graduate, and also right now, currently, I go to Dominican University. I want to become a teacher in Marin County. I have 12 more classes. But I just want to say, please, please, please consider saving Golden Gate Village. It is my home. I had a long speech, but I'm here now, and I don't have time to get it open, but I will. Home is where the heart is. If the government takes away my community, it is like taking away a piece of my heart. Marin City Golden Gate Village landmark is the soul to Marin County. The historic buildings that the architect Frank Lloyd Wright and Aaron Green designed significantly is where I grew up believing the pink palaces. Without Marin City Golden Gate Village, excuse me, I'm all over the place. Marin City Golden Gate Village is just that, a village. African American and other ethnicities living together, raising their families with integrity and faith, and now hope. My great ancestors came during World War II to work in the shipyards, being the 4th generation here, coming from Topeka, Kansas. My great grandmother coming from Chicago, Illinois. And she said she never looked back. During a okay. Yes, I did. I said enough. But yes, please consider saving Marin City Golden Gate Village. Like I said, I'm a student at Dominican, and I want to stay in Marin City and raise my family one day. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's it, 34 seconds?
Half a minute. One more. Travis White.
He's gone?
He's gone, okay. LaDonna Williams.
Just anybody else.
Yeah. We just pick whoever wants to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we stop there.
Okay, yeah, just stop it. Okay.
All right. So we'll reset and hear opponents, opposition.
This is the order that they've requested. This is the order they've requested.
Can we reset?
20 minutes, yes.
Louis Jordan?
Good morning, Commissioners. Louis Jordan, I'm the Executive Director of the Housing Authority County of Marin, and we thank you for the opportunity to come and speak before you today. As you know, Golden Gate Village is our only public housing development in Marin County, and it serves low-income residents. I think it's important for the record that the Commissioners know that the Marin Housing Authority does not oppose the listing. I can't be more clear. We're not in opposition to the listing. The concerns are about the lack of information and analysis contained in this nomination and the process to date. MHA, as the property owner, is responsible for the property and long-term management of the property. Designation of the property to the National Register will impact the way we manage the property moving forward, and for that reason, MHA needs more detailed clarity in the nomination to support the effective long-term management of the site, especially if it's expected to maintain an historic district according to the national standards. Also wanted to emphasize that we embrace, and actually the Housing Authority has been a part of this rich culture that people have spoken about before. We embrace that culture, we embrace the environment, and we also are a significant part of what is making history today. Our involvement with the Housing Authority, our involvement in education, our involvement in the arts, our involvement in economic factors. So clearly we're just not a landlord. We're a significant part of this community. And also wanted to note that there are no plans, there's been no plans at all to tear down the buildings, to demolish buildings. Again, we're looking to find ways in which we can continue to manage property with the ever dwindling support from the federal government. it bears known that we only receive money from our federal government. We've never had enough to really support our day-to-day operations or capital improvements. And if we understand what's in the news today, we're looking for even more cuts as it relates to that. We're in the process of evaluating our long-term stewardship of safe housing for residents and has not made decisions about the future of the property. In our efforts to better understand the application as well as the implication of the National Register, we went out and sought counsel. We hired Gretchen Hilliard from ICF, who's a noted architectural firm, to do a peer review, and she'll come up in a moment. And in addition, to better understand the procedures around the process, we hired Alicia Guerrera as legal counsel, who will also clarify the process and the procedures for those deficiencies. Today, MHA is asking for more time to understand what the designation means, and so that a more detailed analysis can occur. When we received the nomination package from SHPO, we had our technical consultants review, and they told us that there's important information missing from this nomination. And before you make a decision, we would like for you to consider that information that clearly we could not find, nor could our consultant find. With that being said, I'd like to invite Gretchen Hilliard up to the podium to talk about some of the technical aspects that were identified in the nomination.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Gretchen Hilliard. I'm a senior architectural historian at ICF in San Francisco. And as Louis said, they hired our firm to try to help them understand what listing in the National Register would mean for their property and their management of the property, as well as to provide some technical review of the report that was presented as the nomination. I have experience in evaluating properties of this type, specifically with the work of Lawrence Halprin, mid-century modern architecture of this period, as well as housing projects such as this. And so we prepared a comment memo you received on June 28th. I hope that it's in your packets. I think it was included. And we understand that the nomination was revised at some point in May before our comments were received, and we do not believe that those comments have been fully addressed yet. During my technical review, I identified several aspects of the evaluation that lack sufficient detail and do not fully follow the National Register requirements. Specifically, the nomination does not include a detailed assessment of the property's existing conditions and alterations, which are substantial, or historic integrity, character-defining features, and a list of contributing and non-contributing elements broken down. These omissions are critical because the significance of the property must have a tangible link to today. I think that there is certainly some significance to this property in terms of its history. I appreciate all of the comments of the people that are here, and I understand their viewpoint. However, the information that's presented is largely related to the significance of the site. And as you all know, there is also a requirement that the integrity of the site be fully analyzed to determine if there's enough historic fabric remaining to convey significance. Based on a site visit, I brought a few slides today just to show some of the conditions I'm speaking on, because I don't think they've been represented in the photographs that you've been provided. So here's just a basic site plan for anyone that's not familiar. We have a series of high-rises on the left surrounding the bowl-shaped site, a series of low-rise garden apartments with shared courtyards, parking areas, and some recreational open spaces that were designed by Lawrence Halprin. The high-rise buildings were originally designed with a pretty clear horizontal facade, and as you can see, there have been some alterations that have occurred over time. 4 of the 8 high-rise towers have been replaced with these large stair towers on the primary public-facing facade. You can see an image here on the other side, as well as many of the original concrete panel railings, which are the horizontal bands along the long facades, have been replaced with metal pipe rail over time for safety reasons. I believe that this really has a strong question of integrity of these 4 high-rises based on those changes, which remove substantial historic fabric. The low-rises are a little bit more of a mixture. Some of the low-rises that you can see here, there's historic images on the left that were included in the nomination and current views on the right. Some of the low-rises do retain integrity. As you can see here, they look the same as they did historically. However, some of them have been remodeled for structural reasons and some of them have been changed in use from residential to commercial use. So here you see the addition of retaining walls and some structural modifications on the first floor. The low-rise courtyards, which were designed by Lawrence Halprin, originally had wood chip and tan bark play areas and sandboxes with some play equipment and seating, which you see on the left. Here's a photo that shows that all of those materials, except for the concrete, have been replaced and infilled with incompatible paving. And as you can see, some newer furnishings. I'm not sure what era these are from, but they're not the original furnishings. The recreation area, I think, is the area that I believe is the most changed. This was the main open space designed by Lawrence Halprin. I know it's hard to see on the left, but it originally had a baseball diamond, completely open, surrounded by trees, with a bowl-shaped play area surrounded by trees, with a sandbox and tan bark play area. Today, the site, this is looking into that recreation area. It's been replaced, the baseball diamond's been replaced by a skate park that's fenced in with chain link, a tennis court and basketball court for recreation. And then there's been also significant changes to the play area, which was once an open feature and now has been enclosed with fencing and modern play equipment. Here you can see and plan a little bit better. I don't know if this has a pointer, but the original shape of the play area is this feature here. That's been modified, the paving's been modified, portions of it have been removed. The area along here has been paved over, which once was pathways, and the topography has been removed. You see these are topography lines showing the bowl. So I think this is the type of level of analysis that I think needs to be done for this site, because it is being proposed as a historic district, and there are a lot of features and there are a lot of different parts of the site that really should be inventoried in more detail to discern what are the contributing and non-contributing features, as well as the character-defining features, which hopefully will help the Marin Housing Authority manage the site moving forward. So I'm available for questions if you have any further questions. Thank you.
Chair McKay, members of the commission, I'm Alicia Guerra with Buckhalter, the land use attorneys for Marin Housing Authority. I represent quite a few landowners, public agencies through the process for state and federal listing of on the National Register, and also through the Section 106 process for compliance with respect to federal agency funding and permits. I'm here today, you have our comment letters, and I will not repeat them. But I'm here today because Ms. Polanco told us that notwithstanding the concerns we raised from a procedural standpoint and from a substantive standpoint concerning the nomination package, that the Office of Historic Preservation was proceeding with the nomination. They felt everything was complete, and if we had concerns, we needed to appeal to you directly to address those concerns. We do not object to the nomination. I want to be clear about that because I think there's a lot of confusion that somehow Marin Housing Authority is opposed to this. We're not opposed to this, but we feel that there's information that's lacking, and Ms. Hilliard has explained to you some of the aspects related to the significance and the integrity of the structures, criteria which you must implement both as a matter of federal law and state law, so you can make an informed decision as to the disposition and treatment of this resource. And we, again, recognize this is an important part of this community, and we're not asking for, or we're not expressing any objection to the importance of it. We need more information. And it's unfortunate that we have to come here today to ask you again, or to ask this commission to provide the information that appears to be missing from the nomination. We've tried for 3 months to get the information from the Office of Historic Preservation. We've tried to get it from the nominator. The information has been unavailable. And with that, I would focus specifically on the integrity of the structures. Current photographs of the current conditions were not included in the nomination package for review. So Ms. Hilliard has undergone a review of the information that was available, but there's information in the current nomination pending before you that makes some representations that are unsupported. So for example, in the May nomination package, it indicates that all of the buildings, all 29 structures that supposedly contribute to this resource have structural integrity, but there's no structural assessment. And in fact, we know of at least one structure that's had some issues concerning settlement and some issues concerning the actual structural stability of that building. And so Marin Housing Authority has asked for that information to be able to understand what the implications are should the buildings be listed as a district, if it's all of the buildings or some of the buildings and the landscape features as well, to understand what does this mean in terms of the structural integrity of those buildings. So we're here today to ask for more information and to ask for more time so that a complete assessment, much like the level of detail included in the Sperry Flower Building item that you just supported as a district, that level of detail is also provided here at a comparable level of analysis so that the Housing Authority can make an informed decision. And with that, I will turn it back to the commission and to, I don't know if Mr. Jordan wanted to have any closing remarks. Thank you. I'm available to answer questions also.
Again, we thank you for the opportunity. I just wanted to reiterate that MHA takes its role in this process very seriously and appreciates the Commission's perspective. As I said, our mission is to provide safe and habitable housing, even in the face of diminishing funding from the federal government. We're looking at ways to maintain and enhance our ability to give the community resources it needs to add services and support for the existing residents. Our goal is to keep it as affordable housing resource, and I'll say that again. Our goal is to keep it as an affordable housing resource with added resources, amenities, education, and economic opportunities to give the residents in Golden Gate Village what everyone wants, healthy and happy place for families of all incomes to be a part of. As currently written, MHA cannot support the nomination package until the analysis is updated to address our consultants' comments and procedural issues in order to provide a complete nomination package. And again, we thank you for your time.
Thank you. Leslie?
I'd actually like to speak at the very end, in the rebuttal period.
Okay. Linda Jackson?
Ms. Jackson has to leave.
Karen Ashby? Oh, wait.
No, she says opposition.
Yeah.
Say opposition.
It says, oh, ma'am, are you speaking in support of or in opposition of the nomination?
I don't know. In support of.
Okay.
So this is the opposition period. Sorry,
Yeah.
the card indicated you
Well,
were.
the only thing I oppose is what Mr. Jordan was saying about affordable.
Yeah, thank you.
That's not necessary.
That's in the other.
Please call me back.
Yeah, rebuttal.
We'll put you in the, okay.
Michelle Himba? Oh, Michael, sorry.
Well, it's still good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to speak before you. My name is Michael Hibma. I'm a architectural historian with 10 years' experience.
Can you please speak up? We're speaking to the microphone. Thank you.
Apologize. My name is Michael Hibma. I'm an architectural historian here in the Bay Area with 10 years of experience in statewide evaluations as well as Western Nevada. And I reviewed the draft nomination. I just have a few comments I'd like to share that touch on what has previously been commented on. First off, I noticed that the nomination at certain times tends to rely on speculative statements about what certain feelings the landscape is supposed to evoke, how people are supposed to feel about when they move around in a landscape. This may be true, but does not appear to be supported in the National Register Bulletin guidance. That doesn't call for those kinds of aspects to be mentioned. The author claims on specifically Section 7, page 8 at the top, the author claims or refers to a contentious relationship between the agency and the tenants. And this may indeed be true. But this is not the place to mention something like that. This document is about information, it's about contextualizing, and it's about learning about the buildings and the property, as well as to provide future researchers an education on what this property is about. And inserting that kind of aspect, I think, is not supported in the National Register guidance. And furthermore, including things like that may indicate a certain bias on the part of the author that really shouldn't be part of this. It needs to be objective and rely on evidence and fact. Furthermore, it is not common practice to include speculative statements that say, if this certain plan was adopted, things would be better. If this, that, or the other was fixed or reversed, then the associative qualities of the significance would be stronger. It is our job as evaluators to assess a property as it is, not as what we think it could be, because then you move into a realm of assumptions based off assumptions, and you can go in any direction with that. The nomination further makes another speculative statement saying, and I quote on section 7, page 12, that a perception among individuals that right had something to do with the property is mentioned, but that doesn't describe what that perception is or who would experience that perception. Indeed, the character-defining features of the property are not specifically clearly labeled, nor is what the aspects of what is Wrightian, as the nomination states, for modern architecture / Wrightian. It doesn't describe what that is, as it should. As for Aaron Green, the nomination mentions that he enjoyed over, I believe, a 60-year career as an architect. And I believe for someone who has that prolific amount of work and experience, that it should be no problem for the nomination to include more information about what he's done, the size of his portfolio, the types of designs he did, the range where he worked, either in California or nationwide, and other properties that can be considered historical resources. Since the nomination didn't provide this, I just spent an hour reviewing source books that I have on file at my office that I routinely go to gain an idea of what locals have deemed is significant. So these are like source books, guidebooks, published by professionals. And I identified 6 buildings or properties associated with Aaron Green, 2 of which have already been discussed: the Civic Center and the property in question. 2 of them are Chapel of the Chimes in Oakland and the other Chapel of the Chimes in Santa Rosa. And his connection is he designed an addition to these buildings, which were originally designed by Julia Morgan. So over 50 years thereabouts separates what Julia's design was and what his design was. And I've been to Chapel of the Chimes in Oakland, and as you move to the back of the property, the aesthetic changes pretty rapidly. Another property I identified in these source books is a property at 5588 Fernhoff Road, built in 1977. This property, I checked the historic property database maintained by OHP, and I think due to its age, it hasn't been evaluated yet. And another property built in 1968 is a Newark Community Center at 35501 Cedar Boulevard in Newark. And that too, I think, since age hasn't been evaluated yet. So there are some, but there are not many. It doesn't appear, based on publicly available information, that...
Your time's up, sir.
Okay. I can provide, if you like.
He got his card, Michael.
This is the rebuttal for the supporters,
Okay.
and she'll be...
Those are the opposition. All right. Reset the clock. We have rebuttal for the supporters. Daniel.
Good morning, commissioners and staff. I'm Daniel Ruark, architect and preparer of the Marin City Public Housing nomination to the National Register.
Can you speak up a little bit, sir?
It has been my distinct privilege and honor to prepare the nomination primarily due to my personal connection to the property as a 14-year resident of Marin City, as well as my long-term association with architect Aaron Green. Regrettably, I'm compelled to make remarks now rebutting the non-supporting presentation rather than spending my time adding more my voice in support of the nomination. This is disappointing to me after all of this effort. There is so much overwhelming support for this nomination as submitted, and I just would like to say I really don't believe that the Marin Housing Authority requires additional time to study this nomination. They have had more than adequate time. They're very smart people, and they have hired even more smarter and more clever people at likely great taxpayers' expense. They fully understand the ramifications of the listing to the National Register, and I just say I would think it's like to say it's a delay tactic to afford them additional time in order to formulate and take action to derail this nomination. Their disagreement with the nomination stems entirely from and concerns the impact it would have for them economically, which is their looming redevelopment plan. I trust that the Commission can see through the MHA's economic motivation. Let's make no mistake about it. Let's be perfectly clear. MHA's feasibility study is just a Trojan horse. It is a Trojan horse. And they are wheeling this Trojan horse to the figurative gates of Golden Gate Village. The Marin Housing Authority has made it very publicly clear that they plan to dismantle and demolish as much of Golden Gate Village as they can get away with in order to replace it with their dystopian vision of a rebuilt community. In addition to 296 units of federally required low-income units, there have been presentations of squeezing in over 120 more higher-priced rental units, as well as mixing in commercial space. This is very publicly recorded. A very dense development proposal that will mar the beauty of the surrounding natural site. This will dismantle and destroy Golden Gate Village as it was created and as we know it today. The MHA, the Marin Housing Authority, has been on this path already. I do not represent the person to respond to or comment upon Marin Housing Authority and their attorney's claim as it pertains to the nomination process itself. That is a state matter, and I'm aware that the State Office of Historic Preservation has made every effort and additional efforts to address their claims. Therefore, any further response to these specific claims would be best handled by staff. I do wish to address the specific claim that the Marin Housing Authority and their consultants have denied access to, quote, technical reports, in quote, reportedly in their claim, I might add. They can only be referring to the Historic Resources Evaluation, the HRE, which is the only technical report and was commissioned of Historic Resource Consultants Garavaglia Architecture by Royce McLemore in 2015. As stated by the Marin Housing Authority's attorney, this privately funded report is unavailable, in quote, and despite multiple requests by the MHA to obtain the report, Ms. McLemore has refused to divulge the full report, end quote. This is completely false and misleading claim, and a copy of the email I hold here, dated August 29, 2016, from Royce McLemore to the Marin Housing Authority Executive Director Louis Jordan and Marin Housing Authority Counsel Ilya Filmus, grants them full access to the full report, which could be viewed at Royce's office located within the Marin City Public Housing. No one from the Marin Housing Authority ever made that effort to access and view the full HRE.
Thank you. Your time is up, sir.
Thank you.
We've reset the clock for opposition rebuttal.
Chair McKay, members of the Commission, I'm offering rebuttal on behalf of Marin Housing Authority. I wish to comment on the prior commenter's suggestions that we misrepresented any information provided to the commission. That's just absolutely false. In fact, the information that was referenced in the email basically indicated my client could go to the source that the proponent, the nominator, had the report, which we understand may be an underlying technical report, but we've not been able to obtain a copy because all that was provided was an excerpt. I also understand from Ms. Polanco that that report was never filed with the state also in support of this nomination. This is not a delay tactic, and I do not appreciate the comment that Marin Housing is just trying to delay this process because they haven't had time to review the information. That's not what this has been about. It's that you have rules as a matter of state and federal law that have not been followed here. That information that's being used to support this application should be shared with the public, the property owners, the public agencies. You should have the information that you're saying is substantial evidence to support the nomination. All we've asked for 3 months is where's the information? If we can have the information, we can review the information. We may not need a lot of time to review the information, but we've been trying to kind of guess at what that information may say in the comments we've provided, and our technical consultants have gone through the information that was provided to point out the things that are missing. Because all of that is helpful in understanding what structures contribute to a historic district, what structures do not, what structures compromise the integrity. What are the conditions that compromise the integrity? Your own rules say you must consider the significance and the integrity. And all we're saying is, if we can have that information, then perhaps we can work with you to sort of review the information and figure out how best to manage this property in a way that retains the significance and the context and the integrity of those structures. My client is working with a very limited budget to provide safe and affordable housing for residents in this community, and they take their job very seriously. And to take an approach of just treating the whole thing as if it's a historic resource, as if it's a district, has significant consequences to the ability to manage this as an affordable housing resource for the community. And we're just asking for the information you supposedly have relied on in the nominator's package to be able to understand the consequences of this and how best to manage this complex in a manner consistent with state affordable housing laws and your own rules and the National Historic Preservation Act. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. We're available to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go very, very quickly. Good afternoon now, Commissioners. I'm Leslie Alden. I am aide to Marin County Supervisor Kate Sears, who represents Southern Marin and Marin City. You have a copy of her comments. I believe staff has distributed that, but I'm going to go really quickly. But first, thank you so much for the resolution this morning on recognizing the Marin County Civic Center. It is where I am privileged to work every day, and that was exciting to see that process. Supervisor Sears is at a Golden Gate Bridge District meeting this morning and would be here otherwise, but she asked me to read these comments on her behalf. The request before you to confer historic status on these buildings is in itself an historic moment. It reminds us of the important legacy that we celebrate in Marin City, the Liberty ships built during World War II, the tightly knit community that grew up around that effort, and of course, the reason we are here today, the buildings that replaced the original military worker housing that is now known as Golden Gate Village. And I hope all of you had an opportunity to tour that site. It really is extraordinary and beautiful, but it also is in need of significant restoration, repair, and refurbishing. I've listened carefully to the community and have heard their voices loud and clear. The approach to lifting up the community that lives in public housing, and oh my goodness. So I'm asking you to defer this decision until your next meeting or until the request from the Housing Authority for more information is available. Thank you very, very much for your consideration.
Time's up.
The comment.
Comment period's closed.
I submitted a card, asked to speak in opposition on rebuttal.
Ran out of time.
The time's up, but you can also, there's a,
Yes, right, you
At
can
it-
speak at the end.
at the
for
end,
public
there's
comment
a
period.
public comment period at the end.
All right, thank you.
In that case, can I finish in public comment time?
At the end of the meeting.
At the end of the meeting. Okay, commissioners. Questions?
Chairman McKay, may I speak?
You may speak, sir.
I listened with, this is, sorry, Commissioner Orias. It's been a long morning. I listened with great interest to both the concerns of the residents and the concerns of the Housing Authority and their consultants. And I find many compelling reasons to comment. We are living through a difficult time for public housing. It's one of the most noble things this country did to incorporate communities long neglected into the fabric of society. And now that support from HUD is simply not there. And so we're going to go through periods of very difficult periods for that building type and for that very noble endeavor. So I hear both sides, and I'm sympathetic in many ways to both sides. Now, to the subject of the nomination. No nomination is perfect. There's always gaps, and there's always an adequate level of research and resolution. We always hope for more, but we're limited. We don't want every nomination to become a phone book of research that takes years to do. The staff is supportive of this view, and they aim for concise, informative, purposeful, well-written nominations to the degree possible. I am, given the amount of information and critically the pictures and drawings that were shown, I have enough confidence to have a formed opinion. I think this is a remarkable place. I recognize the care and the design of the three master designers who produced this wonderful place. I recognize, I don't have a problem identifying specific Wrightian features. So, and I'm sure my esteemed colleagues feel the same way. I am somewhat perplexed as to the, and I'll keep these comments very short. I'm perplexed by the request for more information coming from a property owner that should have the information. So, with all due respect, sir, no. Matters of the state of the buildings that go to that level of reach and detail are impractical for most nomination writers. If I heard correctly, a structural report was judged to be kind of nice to submit. I don't think that is adequate. I think that's overreaching. And I think, furthermore, I think modifications to a multiple property listing such as this, a district that has multiple buildings, the Housing Authority has to take care of business in keeping these buildings safe. So modifying balconies, lobbies, elevators, to keep the building, to keep you and to keep the building safe are perfectly adequate. And to a certain point, you have recourse to the historic building code as you go forward in keeping these buildings safe. To the point of a diminished integrity in terms of the landscape design, I would caution against these overly strict literalist interpretations. Trees age, trees die. Spaces that are designed 50, 60 years ago would naturally change. But I have confidence upon reviewing the property on Google Earth and with the pictures that were proposed, that the bones of the original Lawrence Halpern conception are there. So that issue, I think we could safely put it aside. I've said too much, but I'm willing to vote in the positive. Thank you.
Well said.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman? Yes. I have a question for the staff, and that is, have the staff received all the information that you always need in order to take the opinion and decisions that you have taken? Was anything missing that you would request?
The nomination is complete. I feel the preparer responded to my requests for additional documentation with regard to condition, alterations, and integrity. There are 4 pages of that in the Section 7 narrative description. He provided additional photographs actually on his own initiative to make sure that all the different building types were represented. Those photographs date from either October of 2016 or April of 2017, so they show essentially current condition. And yes, I feel the nomination is complete. I had everything I needed to evaluate it and deem it ready to present to you and to carry it forward if you agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Given that as a fact, this type of project that we just saw represents a very high quality of design for public housing. There's something that all our contemporaries, all the architects, including myself, they need to understand very well the thinking, the ability, the strategies, and having as a focal point the quality of life of the people who live there. And from that point of view, this is very representative of what public housing ought to be today and the future. The spatial, the airness, the in-between space that allows for families to interact, for children to play, is all the basic principles that we should follow when we do this type of projects. And the people who were involved, very reputable architects, deserve, from that point of view, this project deserves that recognition that is the proponents are searching. So please, I invite my colleagues to consider that this is a very special quality project, and it should have the respect and recognition that the staff is proposing. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bertoli. Any other comments? I'd entertain a motion.
No. Go ahead.
Should I do that?
Yeah, please.
Sure. I guess this is Commissioner Moss. I can't help but to also make a brief comment, at least into what this structure and the history of this structure represents when we talk about a period of time in our nation's history where there were attempts made to address social injustices, both during, before, and after the war, in terms of what a nation decided it could do with and for some of its citizens who had been denied some basic social and economic rights. And although we are not here to consider any of that with this nomination, we cannot and we would be remiss without talking about other kinds of housing projects and developments that were built at about the same time as this structure. We can talk about places that should have been torn down that weren't. I can think of Cabrini Green. I can think of Potrero Hill. I can think of the Hunters Point projects, and I don't think anybody up here can say they lived in one, but I can. So when we look at, I think, the aesthetic sensibility that was given to the architecture, I think it's exemplary, and I think it's an example of something that should be saved. And I think it's also an important statement that remains for what our nation could be, and perhaps the way we should answer some of these issues that are still with us. And I'm talking about the vast homelessness that we exist with today. So without having said that, I would entertain a motion that the Marin City Public Housing property known as Golden Gate Village be nominated deemed eligible to be forwarded to the keeper for consideration as written. Thank you.
We have a motion.
Let's let Katie finish writing the motion so we could be sure that's
Okay.
done before we have a second.
Commissioner Cerrera, second.
We're clarifying the motion. So,
Okay.
hold your second.
Hold your second.
Jump the gun.
And Brian gets to his.
So the motion is to consider Marin City public housing known as Golden Gate Village as eligible for the National Register and forwarded to the keeper of the register as the same. Maybe we should.
This would actually probably be another way of phrasing it.
Yep, but we had the motion on the recommendation. Thank you. Yep. Okay.
So it should be at the bottom.
Right.
It's determined that Marin City Public Housing right there.
So, Marin City Public Housing eligible under National Register criteria A and C at the local level of significance with a 1955 to 1960 period of significance. And recommend that the State Historic Preservation Officer approve the nomination for forwarding to the National Park Service for listing on the National Register. Was that your intended motion?
Yes, it was.
Okay, now we can have a second.
I second.
I second the motion. So does Alberto.
We have a motion and a second. I'll take a roll call vote.
Bertoli, aye.
Moss, aye.
McKay, aye.
Brandis, aye.
Hanson, aye.
Marcellus, aye.
Rios, aye. Cerrera, aye.
Unanimous. Motion carries by unanimous vote. Yeehaw. So,
So next we have,
National Register? Or
no, public comment.
Public comments. You want to let them settle down, or
Yeah,
that might diminish our public comments?
it would. It will.
You're welcome.
So if they sue me and I go to jail, bring me something in jail, will you? You're welcome. My pleasure. So if I have to go to jail, he has to bring me something in jail.
If I
My
could,
pleasure.
yeah, we're still in the meeting, so.
Right.
All right, I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's coming, you're coming up. No, you're. Yeah, and you're free to come up at public period time to speak.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right.
You stay to them. I
You
mean,
get that
I say
straightened
that,
out?
you're allotted a certain amount of time. It's up
Right.
to you guys to allocate it. It's not up to us to allocate it.
All right.
That's because I don't like calling the names. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just say, you guys allocate your time. So.
Okay. Well, especially when there's a lot.